This is the Toy Train Review.
Welcome to the first edition of Toy Train Review, TMK's new video magazine for those who love toy trains. My name's Tom McComas. I, along with Jim Toohey, have been writing books and making videos about toy trains since 1974. Toy Train Review is going to combine both those approaches. It'll be part journalism, part video, but all toy trains. In this first issue, we're going to tell you the story of the move of that legendary store in New York City called Madison Hardware from Manhattan to Detroit, Michigan. We're going to give you an exclusive inside peek at the Lionel archives. We're going to show you a lot of unusual layouts, and we're going to show you an unusual Lionel display called the Magic Mountain, plus a lot more. So let's get started. Our first story takes us to Princeton, Illinois, where an operator named Dick Brown makes an awful lot happen in a very small amount of space.
This room is only 11 by 24 feet, with a layout somewhat smaller, 7 by 11 feet. But what Dick Brown can do in this space. He runs as many as 13 trains, including 2 on the ceiling and 3 in a back room, on 5 different loops. The secret of so much activity in such a confining area are 2 tight figure-8 loops that circle on 4 levels.
The thing developed very slowly over a period of about 4 years, and I started out with with some basic simple loops, and then as I worked with the supports and the track laying and got more proficient at it, then I decided to do the double loop that crossed underneath itself. Once I finished that one, then I came up with the idea of the figure eights. And decided since I had room that I would build 2 of them instead of 1. And needless to say, I probably spent more time, probably three times as much time on the figure eights as I did the entire rest of the display.
Although he had trains as a boy, his adult interest was not rekindled until 1978, when he bought a train at Christmas for his young son, Tom. He built a small layout in what had formerly been a storage room. Then he moved the layout into its present quarters on top of what was once his ping pong table.
I kept the ping pong table for a long time, and inevitably, as the collection grew, and I wanted to display more of it and show it off more, then eventually the table had to go. The ping pong table had to go, and added as many trains as I possibly could.
Originally, Brown was more interested in the collecting aspects of toy trains than the operating.
As my collection grew, I really turned into more of a collector than an operator. And that's when I started adding the shelving for display purposes. I shied away from scenery, and I also shied away from accessories with the idea of displaying as many trains as I possibly could. What we have is an O-gauge layout with Gargrave's track on most of it. The figure 8 loops in the center, I went with the regular Lionel track.
Dick Brown, who runs an earth-moving company, is an engineer, and those skills were employed when he designed the figure 8s on his layout. He started by banking the tracks in the normal manner towards the inside of the curve, what engineers called super elevation. But he found the tightness of the curves caused the cars to fall off to the inside, so he reversed the bank, creating the proper balance to keep the cars from falling. The loop of track where the orange and black Milwaukee Road F3 is running is banked in the normal way, and this allows Brown to run it at full speed around the curves.
The reason the figure 8s don't work is because they're just too constrained. They're too tight a curve, and if you could, you could do it if you expand. If you made the figure 8s twice as big as they are, then you could go to the super elevation and make it work.
But even with all his expert engineering skills, Dick Brown finds things can still go wrong. Nice catch, Dick.
As you can see today, had quite a few problems, but in general, trying to run 13 trains, I guess, you're going to have some derailments.
For power, Brown uses both 275 ZWs and Type Z Lionel transformers. He prefers the Type Z.
You run 4 trains off of that transformer, and they all have good power at all times, where with the ZW, you turn all 4 of them on and you see a marked reduction in the power getting to the engines.
Dick Brown is a 1956 graduate of the University of Notre Dame and an active alumnus. His walls contain several custom-made stained glass windows with a Notre Dame theme. Behind the glass partition is the room where Dick's first layout was, and that area still contains a 3-level layout and a handsome suspension bridge he made himself. Most of the trains he runs in both rooms are current Lionel.
Anything that I purchase, I do not run it immediately. I leave it in the box for several months, and I see what the comparative value. If the piece goes up in value, I probably will not run it, because naturally it's going to be worth more money if it's new in the box than if it's been operated. Well, in 1941, I had my first Lionel train, which was a small set, a 1666 steam engine, and just 2 cars and a caboose. 5 years later, I got my second train, which was a 726 steam engine, a little longer train, and I'm just happy that I retained and held on to those trains until I got interested in the collection again.
Brown once flirted with the idea of expanding his train operations to an adjoining room, but his wife, although she likes trains, drew the line.
That was the ultimatum. She said if I tried to leave this room and take over the big room, that we might have a serious marital problem at that time.
Back in 1979, when Dick started building his layout, his son Tom was only 8 years old.
And we spent a lot of time working on the trains together, operating them together until he was approximately 13 or 14, and then he realized there were girls, and that was the end of his times in the train room.
But Dick Brown remains involved, and he gets others involved too.
Well, the rule is if you come in my house, then you cannot leave until you have seen the trains. My greatest joy, truly, is to have people come and observe the layout.
This is a Lionel dealer display from 1950. It applies the same principles as Dick Brown's layout we just saw. When the train went into the tunnel, it gave the illusion of being swallowed up. "What happens to the train?" an advertisement for the display said. "People will watch in amazement," and we guess they did. But here's the secret: a tight circle of track inside the tunnel, very similar to Dick Brown's circles. 1950 was the first year of Lionel's Magna traction, which gave the engine the sticking and pulling power to negotiate the tight curve. The display was designed for a 14-car train, although this one only has 9. The dealer could buy the whole works: the engine and the tender, 14 gondolas, the 8x4.5-foot layout, everything except the accessories, for $80.
These are boxes, and these are boxes, and these, and these, and in them train stuff: wheels, boxcars, locomotives, accessories, who knows what all. It's what's in the boxes, in fact, that makes this story so intriguing. Once the things in the boxes were here at a legendary Lionel train store in New York, New York, named Madison Hardware. Madison Hardware was owned and operated for more than 60 years by Lou Scher and Carl Shaw. They hovered over the largest inventory of original Lionel trains and parts in the world. It was the sort of store that collectors made pilgrimages to, regardless of whether they bought anything or not. In the summer of 1989, Lou and Carl, then 89 and 85 respectively, closed the store and sold its contents to Richard Kuhn, chairman of the board of Lionel Trains. The deal had nothing to do with the Lionel Company, but was a private venture on Kuhn's part. Kuhn wanted to move Madison Hardware from New York to Detroit, his home base. He sent an assistant, Chuck Liebrock, to oversee the move. Not only did Kuhn want all the inventory,
he also specified we literally bring back Madison Hardware lock, stock, and barrel. That includes all the shelving, the stools, the desks, the cash registers, all dismantling the front window, those gorgeous drawers that were in the back that were right by Lou and Carl that held all the parts for all those years, the wooden oak drawers.
It took almost 2 months, 16 semi-trailer trucks, and 1,700 huge boxes to complete the move. Now, all those boxes that once were at Madison in New York are here in Detroit, in a big warehouse that carries the same name, Madison Hardware. And for more than a year, workers have been unloading those boxes, while tin plate fans across the country have been wondering what has been found, what eventually will be sold. Unloading and classifying the entire inventory of Madison Hardware has been a big job, but not as arduous as packing and moving it out of the old store during the hot summer of '89.
13 movers, 5 to 6 days a week, and we're talking long days. We're talking packing trucks till 10:15 at night and starting very early in the morning, all day long. No air conditioning, of course. This is July and August heat. It was amazing. Trains, all ages and gauges, hanging on shelves on the floor in the corner behind the door. It was incredible. It really was incredible. I feel it was difficult for Lou and Carl to have to up and move after they had invested their entire life in Madison. We felt that we were taking away history, tearing it down, and creating it at the same time. It was very emotional. Carl and I used to play this game. We used to walk around the different warehouses, and Carl would pick up a part off the floor and say, "Charlie, what's this?" And I'd tell him. And I'd try to find some obscure part and walk up to Carl and say, "Carl, what's this?" And we'd always try to catch each other. Carl really knew his parts. Well, so far I was doing pretty good, but one day he held up what looked like a nickel railing on the sign of a horseshoe. He says, "Charlie, what's this?" He had a grin on his face because he knew he had me. I looked at that. I said, "Well, geez, it's not wide enough to be a standard gauge tank car railing, and it's too big to be any kind of other handrail for anything." And he smiles and says, "How about the railing that goes on a 440 signal bridge?" He got me that day. Lou Sure once told me a story. He said, one day, somewhere in the late 40s, early 50s, he got a phone call from Lionel, and it was Pop. And Lionel said, "Lou, we're short on cattle cars. We need cattle cars. Would you mind terribly if we came down and borrowed some cattle cars from you, and we'll return them next time we make the next run?" And Lou said, "Sure, whatever you need." They needed 600 of them. And Lou was able to supply Lionel with 600 cattle cars. Now this is the operating orange cattle car with the green yellow pen. 600 separate sale cattle cars. And that's just one item. Can you imagine the kind of volume they did back then? He was approached by American Flyer Company many times, their salesman, to in fact carry Flyer and put it in the store window. And Lou said the main reason he did not was out of respect for Josh. Everything was removed except the dirt and the dust left on the floor and some sawdust and the phone system. Well, one of the things I wanted to do was remove the phone so they could not be used after I left, turn over the key. Right when I went to rip the phone cord out of the wall, the phone rings. Well, I answer it, Madison Hardware. It was Richard Kuhn calling. That was the last phone call made to Madison Hardware at the old phone number 777-1111. It was also Joshua Cowan's birthday, August 25th.
In Detroit, the 1,700 boxes were unloaded at their present location in February of 1990. Slowly, through the months, the stacks of unopened boxes have diminished, and the shelves in the back have begun to fill with inventory. Eventually, everything will be on the shelves and identified. Until then, the sorting process continues, while Madison Hardware prepares to open for business. One of the first things Madison Hardware will be selling is this exclusive boxcar.
This is a Lionel limited edition operating boxcar. The man unloads a Lionel miniature train set. Comes with die-cast sprung trucks.
It's a daunting task, getting Madison Hardware ready to reopen in Detroit. There's still a lot of boxes to go, but the job is made easier knowing any one of them may contain some delightful surprises.
Here's a brand new pre-war cab, an original factory wrap. The front end to a 746, brand new. For post-war, 221T, could be gray or black. This one's black, brand new, like the day it was made. Here's the box of the, this is for the smoke bulb for the early 46 turbines and Berkshires with the smoke, anything that requires a smoke bulb. Brand new, Basco Bridge base plate. There's a whole box of them in here. The bulk of the box are brand new 6801 boat cars. They're new, here you go, HO billboards. You never know what you're going to find.
Lionel Classic Locomotive Series presents Volume 2, the Lionel F3. Come ride the 12-track main line with Lionel train experts Donald Shaw, David Shaw, and Douglas Waller. Produced at the height of Lionel's success, the F3 is Lionel's most popular engine. You'll see these great locomotives in magnificent close-up detail as you have never seen them before. You'll discover how to identify over 40 original variations from the Santa Fe, New York Central, Western Pacific, Southern, Texas Special, Wabash, Illinois Central, Baltimore and Ohio, Milwaukee Road, Rio Grande, Canadian Pacific, and the New Haven. Introduced in 1948 for $42.50, these engines can command thousands of dollars from Lionel collectors today. You'll also learn how to detect counterfeit F3s in super detail. Protect yourself from being fooled by a counterfeit. Yes, you'll see these great locomotives operate on Bill Hopping's celebrated Madison Central Railroad. A dozen road names running nose to nose. Lionel Classic Locomotive Series, the Lionel F3. Add it to your collection today. And by the way, it makes a great gift. Order today.
Gary Cormack is our man in Montreal. He is a Lionel collector and also a TV producer. He sent us this story about a layout featuring European double O-gauge trains.
When I was a boy, I always wanted to have a large model railway, but I never really got one. So when I got a bit older and started to have a little bit of money, I started buying what I could, mostly used. Actual layout is about 90% used equipment, which saved me a lot of money. And I've been sort of fulfilling my childhood fantasies ever since.
Like many of us, Ivan Dow, a Montreal trying operator and collector, lives out his childhood dreams through his extensive layout. You're about to explore Ivan's intriguing world of scenic delights, take a side trip into space, and experience out-of-this-world adventure in model railroading.
And this is the central part of the layout where it all started. And basically the layout grew from here to there to the other side. Most layouts, you look at them and you can actually see what's going on. This layout has basically zillions of tunnels. People have come here 5 and 6 times and they still don't know where any of the trains are coming and going from. So it's designed to be like an interesting layout and a fun layout to watch and operate. There's also a sound system for the layout with two stereo tape decks with 4 speakers giving train sounds in 4 different areas, so it really becomes a total experience. Actually, it's almost all Triang units, which are all basically dating from the 1950s and 60s, with the older style motors and tin-plated tracks. So I have to actually put oil on the tracks in order to keep the trains running because of the problems with what you don't really experience with nickel silver. The actual initial layout started as this small section over here. Then it was enlarged over to here, trying to fit a large freight yard in. And finally it was enlarged here. I switched to electric heat, took out the oil tank, and this room here became the actual real freight yard and the main passenger terminal over here. The actual freight yard and passenger terminal look very complicated, but really it's just one track coming in, going around and coming out with a number of switches coming off the main lines, making it very easy to control. This is designed to be able to run 5 trains independently on the different colored tracks, or even more if you had, say, 20 hands. This is the 01 digital control unit. The advantage, of course, is that you can run multiple trains with just 2 wires running to the layout. Basically, all you do, you program which control you want, which train you want, and then you bring up the fader and control the direction, and you're set and running. You could actually run up to 16 trains with just one of these modules here. The buildings in general are either plastic kit scratch built or Linka, which is like plaster molds that you have to mold and glue together. It's rather time consuming, but it gives you a lot of variety, and like the main castle is built around the furnace, which actually hides the furnace. And so in so doing, I've hidden a furnace and built a nice castle at the same time. It hides all of the piping. The actual layout itself was built out of scrap wood, which was mostly found in the garbage, so there's very little cost in that. And the trees are made out of weeds with ground-up dyed foam for the foliage. There's a lot can actually be done without actually spending a lot of money. The actual mountains are mostly made out of paper mache, painted with brown latex, covered with ground foam. The actual lighting system is controlled by house dimmers and Christmas lights, little sets of 20 in series, like $2 for sets of 20, and Christmas lights on the top, little house dimmers to give a good house system. I've got strobe lights for lightning, little mirror balls for like a spaceship effect. The main castle has a Dungeons and Dragons type scene, which later on I'm going to make into a movie set to put that back into reality. We have murder scenes, the police saving the day. A lot of people working around on the layouts, doing what they normally would be doing. We have mountain climbers. It's designed just to be fun to look at. appreciate. I also like to collect other types of trains. American Flyer, Lionel, scratch-built kits, Hornby O-gauge, and I'm orienting myself more and more towards the Lionel lines, and I'm getting more and more pieces, especially when you do a lot of collecting, people start giving you trains, which is very nice, so I'm hoping to have a nice Lionel layout coming up in the near future. Children like to look at it and play around with it, and if they want to operate it, that's okay too. I'm not very picky about you know, people enjoying the actual layout, hands-on. So it's designed to be like an interesting layout and a fun layout to watch and operate.
This beautiful 484 Burlington Northern was scratch-built by 72-year-old Howard Bixler, and it took him more than 7 years to do it. Built to quarter-inch scale, the Northern has an engineer that moves his head and pulls the reverse lever, a functional brake system, a bell that moves, realistic steam engine sounds, and more smoke coming out of the smokestack than any model engine we've ever seen. A 1 1/2 pound flywheel permits the engine to start evenly, stop smoothly, and move at realistic slow speeds. The locomotive is radio controlled. Both it and the tender are packed with motors, servos, cams, and 4 circuit boards that control the assorted linkage. The smoke effect is achieved by a fan located beneath the stack, which blows the smoke out in an authentic-looking, steady stream. Even the dials in the cab light. After spending 7 years on the Northern, the energetic Howard Bixler is now at work on a model of the Union Pacific's Big Boy. This tape was produced by Sam DePino and is part of the Modeler's Video Journal. For more information, write Sam DePino, P.O. Box 2175, Hanover Park, Illinois, 60103.
We first visited the Lionel archives in 1979 while researching one of our books. The archives had just been moved from the factory to this room on the second floor of Lionel's administrative building. Recently, we stopped by Lionel and asked John Brady, Lionel's former vice president of marketing, to show us around again. The archives is filled with prototypes, accessories, production samples, factory mistakes, mock-ups, parts, ideas which never went into production, and many items still in their original boxes, unopened to this day. There are also some engineering samples, an example of which is this Scout engine, numbered 1001 and painted black. We have on this card
a little notation that says, here's the original Scout locomotive.
Brass, a soft metal, was used so modifications could be made. Then the same modifications would be made to the tool before regular production started. A pre-war Lionel classic, the Hiawatha.
Although you've already seen it before. We have the Hiawatha, which we don't have a tender for, but we do have this prototype.
The prototype is made of sheet metal and the rivets are functional. They hold the different sheets of metal together. This prototype was probably made in 1934 and is rather primitive compared to the prototypes made today.
They certainly would have gotten a pretty good feel for what it's going to look like and how they're going to have to attack the drive system.
An item that never went into production.
Next we have a 675 locomotive, although there's something a little bit different about this one. Every time this one turns a corner, you can see that the trailing truck hits a lever which makes the engineer swivel in position. There we go. I think I'll do it with my hand to make it a little bit more obvious. But he actually will look out the window. Clever mechanical operation. Very, very smart. Might you see that in the future? Huh? You never know. Could be. We'll see just how how easy he is to accomplish, and maybe we will. You never know. I'm going to put him back here as a possible candidate for that.
A good idea for an operating car.
Here is a prototype, which I guess this is the right side. It says Pollock on it. I guess that must be either the manufacturer or the company that would run these cars, but I'm told they're called Tippler cars, and there have been a few in the model railroading magazines. This is actually true to prototype, and it looks like the operation was pretty simple. I'm not sure what triggered it, but there is a motor in here and gearing that would probably slowly rotate the car and allow it to dump and then return it to its upright position and then go back on the road.
We asked John how often the archives are used.
Well, we're in here a fair amount. I'd say we probably visit the archives a couple times a week, and there are some neat ideas. We have, without giving away any secrets, within arm's reach, I have probably 3 products that are going to be in future lines that came out of yesterday's thoughts.
A thought from the 1950s was this answer to American Flyer's rocket car.
Battery powered, and looks like something was spring loaded in the cockpit that would maybe eject along the way. Now this looks to be a later version. This is made out of wood, by the way, wood and metal. But the later version of it, keep the rocket tubes in there, looks like they figured out how to make it with a motor and to put the fuselage in here. I'm not sure exactly how this goes together, but this looks maybe like the ejection mechanism right there. But it would appear that it never got past this stage. We don't have anything that's a looks like, works like that went past this, which usually in old Lionel you'll see the different stages of development as they got closer and closer to production. Somewhere along the line this must have gotten killed pretty early.
There are some handsome F3 prototypes.
Here's a Bessemer. You notice that they're numbered 0000. As you go through the archives, you can see that most of the ones that didn't make it were labeled that way. And in fact, it's possible that all of the prototypes that went through line reviews may have been labeled 0000 until they were approved and turned into real products. But then you have the Bessemer Herald right up front there.
The way present-day Lionel prepares prototypes differs in several significant ways from the way old Lionel did them.
We agree in concept with what we're going to do long before we even get to the stage of building a prototype.
I think what they did, probably because it was cheaper and easier at the time, because they had so many people working for them, that they would actually go to three-dimensional prototype. We oftentimes will go, and I can't show you right now, but oftentimes we'll do a concept drawing of a product and show what it would look like and how it would work before we would get into building something, because it's expensive to do, and it takes an artisan. It's not something you have a design engineer just throw together. Here's Union Pacific with the same, you can't see it, but that's the 4 zeros.
Once a piece goes into production, the final version is a little different from the prototype. This prototype of the Texas Special has a lot of decoration on the front and gold lettering. The production version has less decoration and red lettering. Two complex paint schemes, the Kansas City Southern F3 and the Burlington Jeep.
It was a pretty aggressive scheme, considering that they were having their share of troubles with paint masks and overspray. And in fact, this whole stripe right across the front here is a tape that must have been custom made to make this prototype.
The shelves are filled with dated production samples, as well as some things that are difficult to figure.
This is a rather rough piece, but this blue guy here is trying to put out a fire on the car. And you can see from the pickups that the light is showing through this. I'm not sure just what the effect would be, but I guess it's supposed to look like flames are kind of licking at the car, and he's sitting here with a little hose. Here we have a prototype for a 2026, and you'll notice that this is probably one of the first shots out of the tool, and in fact it's very heavily machined on the top. The parting line is obliterated, but so some of the detail, as was fairly characteristic of Lionel in the past. But interestingly enough, not only is this among the first shots, they had to gouge out some of the area here for the linkage. You can see that that's actually machined off. Somebody took a secondary operation to do that. But look at that. That whole drive system is all the first. I mean, that is not out of a tool. That's all hand machined. And undoubtedly this was a looks like, works like prototype. But also on the wheels, I can't get them turned. No, I can't turn them. There we are. But on the wheel it says Baldwin disc on the counterweights. Kind of a neat look to it. And then along that same line, it's interesting that some of the parts that hold this together are production parts. Some of them are handmade parts. And I'm sure that along the line the engineers were probably just trying to prototype something and get it so that it would run on the road. So they took what they had, they created what they needed beyond what they had, and here we have the 2026 before it ever hit the rails.
Lionel usually creates its own products, but has been known to use outside inventions.
If someone were to create a new way to make an accessory operate, for instance, I mean, they actually work out all of the design engineering and make an accessory that works in a certain particular way, something different from anything else we do. That's a proprietary idea, and one that we would look at and be interested in perhaps picking up.
Lionel is indeed interested in outside ideas. John said the company recently saw an item they were extremely interested in.
And it was wonderful. I mean, we fell in love with it immediately. And we negotiated, made the agreement, and it will be appearing in the 92 line. It's going to be a great item.
The Lionel Archives is an exciting place to visit. It could be a fantasy-like journey into a land of legends, but there is a harsh reality that intrudes.
The Archives isn't really a well-stocked part of our company. We're stocking it now. We put 6 pieces of everything that we produce in the Archives. Not in this part of it. We have a new Archives over at the plant that that carries all of that. This is all just the older stuff. But we're in a room that's probably 16 feet square. That's the extent of our old product.
So if anyone has some old prototypes they'd like to donate, Lionel will be happy to accept them. Now, don't everyone jump at once. Actually, though, it has happened.
This headset is the first donation that was made to the archives from the outside. And in fact, we tagged it, and it says military headphones donated by Ed Goldman, and then his TCA number. And then we put that it was entered into the archives on February 20th, 1991. And there it says the first donation ever made to the archives by an outside donor. Kind of an important milestone.
Companies usually want their names on Lionel cars, but some don't.
They cooperated, sent me the artwork on their packages, and we even got to the point where I had submitted early artwork that we had done in response to it, and it was approved. And we have a non-royalty paying contract in as much as we're able to with a lot of these companies, which I sent, and was in the process of being approved. I got a verbal approval because I was going to catalog at the time, and we actually shot this for the cover of the catalog. And then Kraft came back for no good reason, I'm sure, no apparent reason at least, and said, no, you can't use it. We're sorry. I know we've gone a long way down the road, but we're just not going to be able to work with you. So now I was stuck with a catalog cover that couldn't be changed and a prototype that had no use. So it ended up here in the archives. And in fact, with the exception of a little bit of dust that's picked up over the interim, that's the way it looked.
Would you like to take this opportunity to present to Tom and Jim a little token of your appreciation?
Well, I'd love to, yeah. As a matter of fact, I'd love to give this along with many of the other prototypes to Tom and Jim for all of the great things they've done for us and the hobby.
Thanks, John.
My pleasure. Now I have to look for a job.
A man called Dad is the most important man in his life. And even though the time between them has a way of passing a little too quickly, there's one thing that can make it last. A Lionel train. For over 90 years, Lionel trains have come with something special. The power to move two people closer together and let them build something neither one will ever forget. Lionel, because no childhood should be without a train.
What we have here is the renowned layout of Stan Roy. Stan Roy operates a lot of trains, all at the same time. When we first discovered Stan Roy back in 1986, he was operating 27 trains on 6 loops and 3 levels, automatically and at once. It was the world's record for simultaneous operation. When we next visited him, a couple years later, he was operating 32 trains at once. Now he's operating 35 trains at once. He's still the world's champ, and he might have bigger plans.
Eventually, maybe I'm still thinking of the possibility of adding another layout and taking it up to 45, but as you can tell with all the noise that it makes, it's getting a little tough on the neighborhood.
Stan Roy is an electronic wizard, which is how he has figured out the way to run so many trains at the same time. Since he knows so much, we asked Stan if he would share a few operating insights with us. He started by explaining how he gets a diversity of direction for trains running on the same level.
When I built the layout, I wanted to make it look a little interesting, and I didn't want it to seem as though the 6 trains running on the bottom section looked like one long train. So I had to come up with a way to make the trains, as they approach the switch tracks, to automatically sequence the switch so that one train would go right, the next train would go left. And this was done with the process of using little magnets that I've placed on the side of the trains. As the train approaches it's actually called a reed relay switch that you can buy at Radio Shack. The magnet automatically energizes the reed relay, as you can see by the light going on the top. And then what that in turn does is it fires a transistor, and the transistor then fires a sequence relay that energizes the switch. So if we take a look at the switch track as we're approaching with the magnet, every time the magnet passes by, you can see that the switch sequences in the opposite direction.
Next, Stan explains how he invented his own version of the insulated track section. Everyone who builds layouts is familiar with insulated track sections. They're the most common device used to start and stop trains. But Stan Roy has added a relay.
What you are seeing is one train being automatically controlled by another train. One train is approaching an insulated track section. This miniature track switch or insulated section is being used to control a relay by grounding one side of the track to the other. When the relay becomes energized, it then mechanically transfers or takes away the voltage from the other train's center rail. As the train leaves the insulated track section, the relay then drops out, giving the voltage back to the center section, and once again, the train will proceed.
Finally, Stan has enhanced the operation of his accessories. On the Lionel culvert loader, for example, he installed a new motor.
And what has been done is that the old vibrator with the string has been removed, and it's been replaced with a can motor that you could buy at Radio Shack. And I've taken a rubber band and put it around the motor, which now goes around the gear. And when the mechanism is operating, the motor spins and it turns the gears and makes the culvert loader operate.
Remember erector sets? I sure do, but I could never put those big ones together. I don't know anybody that could put them together, but somebody must have been able to, because we found some big ones that are put together, and we're going to show them to you now.
A layout operating 11 trains on 9 main lines with 30 switches and 3,400 feet of track would be considered an impressive layout, but not necessarily unusual. But Rich Cohn's layout is unusual because all those trains, switches, and track are on the floor in Rich's 2,400 square foot basement. Rich lived in an apartment in the city, but dreamed of having a home in the suburbs so he could build his layout. The Cohns decided to move to a suburb north of Chicago last year.
That, of course, gave me all the excuse I needed to have a layout that I dreamed of having. So I worked very closely with the builder on several aspects, but none the least the basement.
But for 3 beams, the 2,400 square foot basement is open space. Long before the family moved in, Rich visualized his layout. It would be on 3 levels and be complete with scenery.
So I could build those 3 levels, which then will include, of course, things that you don't see now, such as all forms of rural and urban scenery, both level and topographically mixed. It will include various signal lights that will, of course, match all my blocks that I have now in the track. Lattice lights, dwarf singles. It will include grade crossings and all the other accessories that go with that type of situation. But at this stage in the ball game, I'm still very much experimenting with the type of trains, what goes best on what track, and what can take best curves.
But before construction of the permanent layout begins, Rich is having a fine time operating his temporary layout.
And I can run, which I do have now, of approximately 3,400 feet of track on 9 main lines that can carry 11 trains simultaneously.
Among the 11 trains in action are 3 unit trains.
One's a coal train, one's a livestock train, and one's a tank car train. In addition, I've got some mixed freight, I've got some symbol loads, I've got some work trains, and I like to cover roughly between the middle of the Second World War to present day.
With all the exposed wiring and unsecured track, Rich gets a good workout.
Well, you have to move quickly when you have shorts in the track or invariable problems that always seem to pop up.
But Rich Cohn solves those problems one by one. For this floor layout in reality is a laboratory, a chugging, whistling laboratory in motion, where Rich is finding out exactly what type of track to use, how heavy the car should be, how long the train should be, which are the best switches, and what is the most efficient curve radius. These are problems not usually addressed until a layout is built, but Rich Cohn is addressing them now in his laboratory on rails. One day in this room there will be a beautifully landscaped, triple-tiered layout, and matching its looks will be its performance, thanks to the hours Rich Cohn is spending now playing with trains on his basement floor.
A Lionel Tour, the making of the Scale Hudson. Tour the Lionel factory and follow the making of the greatest engine of them all, the Scale Hudson. You'll see everything involved in the manufacturing process: planning, engineering, assembly, decoration, advertising. A rare look behind the scenes. 40 minutes, color, VHS only.
The great toy train collections of the world are displayed in various ways, on shelves, behind glass, in museums. Some collectors have built special rooms to show their things. Others have built special buildings. But Bernie Rubin, a New York-born dentist now practicing in Toronto, can display his collection on a coffee table. He only has 2 items. One, a mint-in-the-box 700E Hudson he paid $35,000 for in 1990 with a set of scale Lionel freight cars. Rubin likes to claim that as a world record price, the same claim he makes for his other acquisition, a mint-in-the-box 763 semi-scale Hudson. In fact, Rubin jokingly says the 2 engines alone make his the most valuable Lionel collection in the world, if you take the average cost per piece.
They are the best example of the finest 2 items that Lionel ever made. In old gauge, I mean, there's no question the top item they made was the full-scale 700E Hudson heading up the full-scale freight set, and I have the best example in the world of it. I have everything is mint, all the cars, including I got the extra Sunoco car. The 700E, which is on this table, I brought it here just to show off, is probably the finest mint plus 700E in the world. The boxes are crisp. There's a set box that's crisp like a brick. A guy offered me $4,000 just for the set box. And there's a shipping, it's everything. It even comes with some hairs of Joshua Lionel Cowan in the box that you can stroke. And if you're going to say a second best engine, you would have to say the semi-scale gray Hudson with the coal pile tender, and it's sitting right here. I just bought it today for only $17,500, another new world record, and it is the finest gray coal pile engine tender in the world. Here are the boxes.
Although Bernie Rubin admits a world-class collection doesn't come cheaply, he nevertheless emphasizes the need for shrewdness. At a recent York meet, we asked him if he would share his dealing tips with our viewers.
I'm now teaching all you collectors how to negotiate. Ed Prendeville said, I want $25,000 for the entire set. I said, I'll give you $35,000. You get it that way every time.
We asked Bernie Rubin if he could, perhaps, elaborate on this rather arcane negotiating technique.
I think he told me he had turned down 25. And I think I went to 30 a day later. And I'm very shrewd. You have to have patience. I waited another day and went to 35. And his attitude is, if you're that crazy, you know, there's a recession, times were slow. He said, Bernie, it's yours. I made his York in October. And Kenny Post of this gray coal pile, I made his York. Now, everyone's crying, but Post and Prendeville are doing very well. It was like an addiction. It's like the second I saw a shelf full of trains and saw there's such a thing as collecting them, I was addicted. It replaced Mickey Mantle as the top item in my life.
Well, that's our show. We hope you enjoyed it. In fact, we hope you enjoyed it so much you'll become a subscriber if you're not already a subscriber. If you are a subscriber, encourage your friends to become subscribers because we need your support. Toy Train Revue is based on the idea that video is the best way to capture all the action, the fun, the color, and the excitement of the world of toy trains. For example, in the next edition of Toy Train Revue, we're going to show you this new Lionel lift bridge in action. You'll see the bridge go up, you'll see the bridge go down, you'll hear the sounds it makes. So come on aboard. Toy Train Revue is your show too. Tell us what you want to see, make suggestions, give us ideas, send in your videos. We want to cover every aspect of toy trains. New trains, classics from the past, interviews with collectors and operators, great layouts, tips about operating, maintenance and restoration, reviews on new products. And we want to have fun too. So become a subscriber. If you're a manufacturer or a dealer, buy an ad. Toy Train Revue #2 will be out soon. Don't miss it.
From the great Atlantic Ocean to the wide Pacific shore, from the green and growing mountain to the south belt by the shore, she's mighty tall and handsome, known quite well by all. She's the regular combination, she's a Wabash cannonball. Listen to the jingle, the rumble and the roar as she glides along the woodland to the hill and by the shore. Hear the mighty rush of the engine, hear the lonesome hobo squall, riding through the jungle on the Wabash Cannonball. Well, the eastern states are dandies, so the western people say. St. Louis to Chicago, Rock Island.
TMK Books and Videos. Tradition, excellence.